When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high-rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Doran.
Here's the conclusion of my conversation with Ryan Maibach and Ethan Ewell from Barton, Malow in this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast. If you haven't listened to part one yet, you should definitely go give that a listen before this, since we expand upon the concepts from that episode here. Hope you enjoy it. What are the challenges you're facing as it relates to getting the people you need to be able to staff mega projects like Ford or many other projects you have in different parts of the country? What are the challenges you're facing today?
They're definitely broad. I think, we can look at the potential workforce challenges through a lens of the industry as a whole. And I know from listening to some of the past podcast episodes, Dennis, you've covered that. I think some of ours really get to, first and foremost, trying to understand and forecast what some of the needs and opportunities for human capital really are. I mean, it's remarkable the market that we're in right now. And it used to be when, a couple few $100 million project, that was a big job. And the magnitude and the size, the complexity of some of our projects are unlike what we've really ever experienced before. Again, referencing the Glendale, Kentucky project for Ford. It's remarkable in its size and scope. Mm-hmm. First time I saw it on a report, I just saw it. I was convinced it was an error. Someone fat fingered an extra zero, because there are just not projects of that size. And so just a very different level of complexity, and will require a very different level of oversight from Ethan, from the team that's down there, from a foreman that's trying to manage a crew that's spread out over not just square feet or square meters, really square miles. It's massive in its magnitude and complexity. And have large programs and projects existed in the industry in the past? Certainly. But I think the number of those, certainly that we see in our backlog and in our portfolio, and I know from speaking to some of my peers that are in theirs as well, the market as a whole is at a really unique juncture. So again, the complexities therein are unique. How do you forecast what the human capital needs may be, both for ourselves as well as for our trades? How do you ramp up efforts to introduce the industry potentially to those that don't have a background in it? Because on paper, we can anticipate that the needs are going to be great. But, I'll be honest, it pokes a little bit at integrity, because I think what I've witnessed, I feel like, at least on a couple of times in my career, are significant ramp ups that are often followed by contractions. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit daunting at times to want to introduce the industry to so many folks, but knowing as well that the industry can be very cyclical. And so there are some, I think, really unfortunate stories and examples where people have been brought in and been introduced to the industry, but then have departed when the work wasn't there. Yeah. And I think that that's a real unfortunate challenge, and something that we speak a fair bit about is how do we ensure a measure of sustainability and longevity, minimize some of the peaks and valleys, if you will, that we know are patterns of the industry in the past.
Yeah. I had an opportunity to be at a conference that I was chairing, and we invited a gentleman from actually a company, you probably know this company, FMI, out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Another one of my stops on my career's journey was with FMI. But their lead economist came and spoke to an association of union contractors in Chicago. And one of the things he kind of threw up on the board was as a myth. And the myth is that there is a workforce shortage in the construction industry. And he said, there is no workforce shortage. This is simply a feature of the construction industry and how it operates. Sometimes demand is great, sometimes demand is lower, and you don't know what the ebbs and flows are going to be, but you have to be prepared to deal with it in order to be able to sustain your business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And I know you recently engaged in the topic of data and analytics on a recent podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I can say we have significantly ramped up our efforts therein. We are very fortunate to have a fantastic leader, Cesar Diaz, that has been able to, is very passionate and is able to help shape data into really actionable packets for us. And
Good.
we're fortunate. We have 99 years of financial history, and we've analyzed it, every which way till Sunday to look at the various patterns, and then go levels deeper to try to understand. And it's been very helpful to try to minimize, to your point, some of those peaks and valleys, because ultimately it's not just the valleys that can have a negative impact on people. It can be both. I mean, I think for any of us, I mean, when we look at our own personal experiences, when there are significant changes in our lives, that can be stressful, that can be challenging, that can generate anxiety. And so, ramping up on some of, again, the ramping workload up, and then as well ramping workload down very quickly can really take a human toll. And so it's something that we are spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to balance, how to get, to your point on the economist comment, minimize some of those extremes.
Yeah, yeah. Ethan, how do you see it on the front line? You're at probably one of your largest projects that's active right now. I would guess it would almost have to be. Is that fair, Ryan? If you got projects bigger than 4?
100%. We don't need to look at any data or analytics to know that.
No.
It's a solid.
So how do you see it on the front line, Ethan? We talk about having the people that you need, the right kinds of people, and some of them are just arms and legs that you can train credibly to do the less skilled activities that are part of a construction project. Others are much more highly trained, certified, et cetera, et cetera. How do you see it on the front lines?
Yeah, I mean, we've certainly had our challenges, especially the size, a project this size. I'd say, fortunately, for myself and what I oversee, coming in early on in the project, one of the first boots on the ground, I think we get a lot of those people, through the doors and trial by error, and kind of, vet that out. So we've, I think, been fortunate. I think part of that is, the size of the job also attracts people, I think, which is helpful. But I think other contractors, especially later on, as they come on board, some MEP contractors have really felt that challenge of finding enough people. There's been a lot of conversations around, I think, bonus payments and stuff like that, to try to get people here. And then as, our owner client, brings on the process side, that just adds to the stress, and, you just kind of feel it squeezing down, on the contractors around you. So definitely had challenges. I mean, even, bringing in, being away from our hometown, trying to get, I think we have 200 and some people on our, payroll, just for concrete. So trying to get that many people and really buying into our culture of safety and, the experts that we need to do our job and be out there working safe every day is definitely has its challenges. I think I would say we've done a pretty good job at overcoming. We still got work to do. But I think we're getting there.
Yeah. How do you feel you guys have done with regards to dealing with the realities? I like to talk about inclusion, but the predecessor term, which is still operationalized in many places, is diversity. How do you feel you guys are doing as far as diversifying your workforce? So getting more representation from underserved populations, women in the workforce. How do you feel you're doing?
I think we're making progress. I think, it certainly can be debatable the pace of progress, but I think that we're making progress, and I think that there are several qualitative as well as quantitative cues that can support and validate that. And as well, I think the industry as a whole is changing. Again, you can debate pace, but it's changing in a way that is positive and embracing. And I think that, again, the size of projects, creates opportunities to be able to introduce the industry to a workforce that maybe hasn't been familiar. And again, we referenced earlier the legacy, the family legacy that I believe we see within Barton Malow, but also I know exists in many other firms. And so, that's again really positive. Depending on how much you highlight that and embrace that can also make it potentially intimidating or challenging for people that are the first in their family, or maybe don't have any family history of understanding of construction. If you have that family legacy, that a lot of the traditional paradigms of the business aren't necessarily valid, and that there's some tremendous positives. If you don't have that family legacy, there is definitely a paradigm and a stigma that we have to overcome as an industry. And I think it takes a long time to change perceptions. And so the reality too is that we're in an economy where people have options. There are a lot of options that are out there. And we also learned things through COVID in terms of flexibility. That's the range of possibilities of how people can work have expanded exponentially comparative to what we experienced pre-COVID. So we're competing both as firms in the industry and then as an industry as a whole with a range of different challenges. So back again to your question, Dennis, I think we're making progress, and it's positive in several regards. But I think that there's obviously still a tremendous amount of work to do. We do not have a workforce as a whole, as an industry, that mirrors society. Is it reasonable to contemplate that we get 100% of the way there? Maybe not, but certainly a lot closer to that than what we currently are.
Yeah. Well, there is a steadily increasing amount of dialogue around the whole notion of equity, inclusion, social justice. You've heard, again, if you look at my stuff, that I talk about four things in some way in every conversation I have, and in every workshop I deliver. And they are inclusion, social justice, leadership, and now with the question, I talk about love. So share with me, both of you, your thoughts about the role that love plays in the business that Barton Malow is in.
Well, Dennis, I don't know that that's a question I've been asked before, and I was going to punt that one over to Ethan, but
and he would punt it back to you, and then would be punting. And
I would say just I guess all joking aside, I think, or I guess maybe not joking aside, but for me, when you first asked that question, Dennis, is well, I met my wife here, so of course I love the business, right?
I wasn't going to bring that up, but knowing Tara, I was kind of hopeful that you would, Ethan. But yeah, I think love. Interestingly, Dennis, two of those words, at least, love and leadership, can be so broad and potentially interpreted in so many different ways. Leadership is a whole nother potential exploration, but within love, people can talk about love in so many different ways. Oh man, I love that. That was great. We're talking about food or talking about some experience.
Yeah.
I love this person. We can talk about it again from a relational context. So I generally, although I use words like love and leadership quite frequently, I think if it's delivering a point, you want to be really careful to make sure that people really grasp it and understand it. And so, I think that it's great that you are embracing those words and they clearly mean something to you. I think I might use different words, but they might have similar meaning. And so, I think for me, when we talk about love in a relational context, it just really gets to, I have tremendous respect for Ethan. I think it's okay for me to say, I don't know that I really love Ethan. I really like you. I have huge respect for you. I'm really glad, Ethan, that you love Tara. But I think making sure that that dignity and that respect that I believe is embedded in love absolutely would be there, is critically important in every relationship.
I guess now, like, Ryan, I think I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think maybe one thing that does come to mind is I guess, or maybe around love would be just, hey, we want people to love what they do, because if they don't love and enjoy what they do, then maybe we're not getting the most out of them, or maybe they're not fully engaged with what they're doing.
See, and you guys thought you had nothing to say about it.
It just took me a minute.
It feels like a gotcha question, but it comes from my learning over the years, and in particular, my mentor is a guy named Steve Farber, who's probably one of the better known leadership experts traveling around, and he wrote a book 20 years ago that was entitled The Radical Leap, and he used storytelling to convey his 4 tenets of leadership. And the acronym LEAP stands for love as the first, energy as the second, audacity as the third, and the fourth being proof. So what he would say is that, love generates energy. If you're energetic and excited about what you're engaged in, you're going to be willing to not be constrained by saying we can't do things outside the box, because there is no box, but we also can't do things that produce bad results. So the proof that love works in business is the bottom line. Because he would also say, and he wrote another book called Love is Just Damn Good Business. It was published a couple of years ago. I highly recommend all of his books. We are closely aligned. So the idea around love, and you basically said it the right way. And Ryan, everything you said was in play. The idea that, and again, this comes from his book. And he knows that I talk about him in his book quite a bit, and annoys him in only the best ways possible. But one of the set of phrases that you heard, Ethan, actually in my workshop, and it was in some proper context, but it really had to do with our outlook on our existence, and a big part of our existence is what we do to make a living. And the phrases are this: do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. Man, that's undeniable, and that's not the mushy-gushy love. That just simply says, if you got the energy, and it doesn't mean you love everything about your job every day. I'm sure there are days, Ryan and Ethan, the same way, that you just wish, I'm not going to look at the email. I'm not going to agree to that meeting. I'm not going to talk to that guy over there that's headed my way. But that's the practical reality of life. But the outlook is the key. I asked that question. I asked it a little differently. I said, what role does love play in your life, at work, at home, and in your community? I put that question to 6 leaders when I did a modified Soft as Steel podcast in front of a live audience at the International Union of Paintings and Allied Trades Finishing Industries Forum, at one of their 2 major meetings each year. And I had the general president, along with leaders from 5 different contracting companies in the finishing trades, and I asked them that question in front of a live audience. So if you're curious to hear how other people answer that question, that whole video is on my website, and you can fast forward to that where that question is and listen to their answers. You guys both did fine, but it's another level of awareness about something that you already know something about, but sometimes putting it into words seems uncomfortable, awkward, or just doesn't quite fit, because we all jump to the first thought is, lovey-dovey, my wife, my girlfriend, whatever it is. But Ryan, you talked about the other ways that love is present and appropriate to talk about it. I love playing golf. I'm awful at it, but I love playing golf. I love talking to people, and I'm a little bit better at that than golf, thank God. But you understand where I'm coming from. It's a good word. And it's a word that really that you embrace it without saying it. So I'm not suggesting that you add it to your vocabulary, although the framework of what Steve refers to as extreme leadership is something that would probably fit very well with your refreshing process, taking a look at your values. And there's an engineering company in Seattle that integrated the LEAP framework into their corporate values. and kind of restructured how they talk about the culture of their company, using this as an additional element in that. So that's why I always bring up love, because I'm all for that. And I think that set of phrases, anybody can use it and use it to the benefit of whatever it is they're trying to advance. At the end of the day, if you have happy customers, you're not going to be hard bidding all your jobs, because they're going to come back to you, right, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for anyone in the industry, the sweet spot is the ability to build trust and build relationship over time. Again, mutual trust, where you can move forward and just pick up work and keep doing it. And so, definitely agree.
Ethan, any other thought around this on love or the related issues around it, or should we move on to our next topic? Yeah, Ryan, I think Ethan, for being as nervous as he was, I think he's a bit of a chatty Cathy, is what I'm saying.
I did not sense any of the nerves, Dennis, maybe that you did. I think Ethan is pretty.
Well, no, he told me he was nervous. I can't. I'm pretty good at sensing things in people, but he told me. I said I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm calling you on it, Ethan. I think it was a setup. Actually, I think it was a setup.
All right. You can talk to my wife. I'm sure she'll tell you otherwise.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Let's so we talked a bit about workforce development. We've and I don't want to end. We talked a little bit about generational things, and again, a question I have around generations. Obviously, we know they're represented in our workforce. The baby boomers, of which I am a proud member of the upper echelon of that group. We're steadily declining. Do you have any feel for what percentage of your overall workforce are baby boomers that you're going to be losing over the next 2 to 5 years or shorter? Who knows? Any sense of that?
Dennis, we do have that data. Unfortunately, I should have been maybe better prepared to have that be able to speak to right off the cuff. We are fortunate as we would evaluate our workforce comparative to the industry averages or norms, especially in the realm of leadership. When you look at someone like Ethan and the role that he's in, we tend to be younger than the industry average, which is positive. And
yes.
So I feel pretty optimistic about how we're positioned. But again, I think when we look holistically, we don't build in a vacuum, and we're relying on an ecosystem of an industry as a whole to help us get to a good place. And so, it's interesting. One of the other positives of having, family legacy is the ability for me to talk to my dad, who started work in this business long ago. We were able to celebrate, I think it was 55 years of anniversary for him. And
wow.
So it's nice to be able to say, hey, just out of curiosity, I mean, has this come up before? And there are absolutely themes, and there are workforce related themes that have transcended over decades. And so as we say that, I don't think we should leave it to chance that, hey, look, this stuff is just going to get figured out on its own. That's probably not good. But I also don't know that we need to be overly concerned. We are an industry that is comprised of professional problem solvers, and we overcome on a daily basis to be able to do what we do. And so, I tend to be a glass half full type of person, and I'm quite confident that we're gonna make a positive difference with some of the workforce challenges that we're talking about.
That's a good position to be in. I would also say that the way I hear you talk about it is sensible is the word I want to use. I mean, again, what I really appreciate about both of you in this conversation is your plain spokenness, if that's a word. Is that a word? Spokenness? Sounds good, doesn't it? Right?
Does sound good.
Yeah.
I think it's plain spoken.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, help me out here. I
was saying plain spokenness is plain spoken, so that's great.
Oh, good. Okay, so I'm okay. Okay, yeah, Ethan, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Thank God that this is only going to be audio, because they'd see the expression on this old guy's face looking like an idiot. But that's a little bit who I am. I'm not trying to be formal and structured and totally like nerdy about this. I'm having a conversation with a couple of pretty incredible people that I've just met. Well, Ryan's I've just met. People versus technology. I can't let this time end without us talking about that, because it relates to generational. It relates to workforce development. I mean, I'm kind of interested from the ground, from the boots on the ground perspective initially. What are you seeing? What are you talking about? What do you think are the issues around the integration of technology into how we do our work?
I guess, Dennis, I had a comment, based off the last question you asked Ryan, and that it's probably going to tie into technology. But I think a lot of, and I think I agree from the trade side. I'm seeing this really the same thing. I think we actually have a lot of middle-aged to younger people out in the field. So I think as that baby boomer generation retires and moves on, I think we're actually set up for pretty good success. And I think moving into your technology question specifically, or people versus technology, is we do have a lot of young people in, I would say, leadership roles within in the field and in the trades, and I think one of the things that helps bridge that gap of generations is technology and the way we use it. Hey, I think led by Barton Malow is we are very innovative. I think Ryan himself, really pushes the innovative side of the company, and definitely, has that, at the top of one of our initiatives. So what we do with, virtual design and modeling and all of that, and how they, how we have a team of people that, creates, these drawings, or, just the technology we have, and gives it to the people in the field, our field leaders, helps them be better builders, and helps them streamline their knowledge, and I guess expedite their knowledge on what to build and how to build it. So like I said, I definitely think there's a tie with technology that definitely helps bridge that gap of maybe the lack of the Gen Xers, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Ryan?
Yeah, I think that the way that you put that, Dennis, people versus technology, I mean, versus, it kind of indicates in opposition to, or that there's this, again, contrast. And, technology absent people really doesn't do much of anything. I think people absent technology were incredibly challenged. And so, it really does get to, the concept Jim Collins introduced, or at least where I first read, the tyranny of the or. You don't need to look at this in opposition. It's how do these two things that aren't going away, how best to find synergy in working together. And I can confidently say that technology certainly helps me do what I do better. I believe it helps Ethan do what he does better. And quite frankly, absent technology, we wouldn't even be able to be recording this podcast. And so, there are so many positives that make us as humans better in many ways. Are there downsides to technology? Absolutely. But that's true of everything that we engage in life. And I think part of, again, the reason we as humans are special and unique is that, it's incumbent upon us to discern, to understand, how best to extract the positives and minimize some of the negatives. And so I'm super optimistic that technology, we've already seen technology move the needle in positive ways, but I'm super optimistic that it's just going to continue to do so at an accelerating pace. I don't believe that creates roadblocks. I think it actually helps to really connect to a number of the other things we've talked about, introduce the industry to others in ways that actually takes barriers down as opposed to puts them up. And I see a lot of real positives. Does it mean it's going to change? Is it potentially create anxiety? No question. I mean, I'm increasingly, as someone who's on the cusp of 50, who learned typing in high school on a typewriter. Still, I think I was one of the last in my high school to have it on a typewriter. Change can be hard. And I definitely feel technology change. I embrace it different today than I did 10 years ago. It was much easier 10 years ago than it is today.
Right.
But I think I have a different experience that can help those that maybe are, again, able to embrace that technology better than maybe I can. I add value in maybe some different ways. And so it's going to be, I think, a perpetual cycle of introduction of new technologies. We figure out how best to embrace it and adapt. But I think it's a real accelerator and a real positive for us as individuals, as well as the industry as a whole.
Yeah. I think the way you answered was terrific. I would say that this is a good example of applying loose application of the phrase, fear is the absence of faith. The faith part is in your leadership, that they're going to make prudent decisions to determine what's the best way for us to utilize this expanding additional resource in coordination with our people as our primary resource to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of everything we do, and thereby ultimately serving our customers better and doing it perhaps in a more profitable manner. And there's nothing wrong with making money in the construction business. It shouldn't be a bad word. Some people like to throw it around that way, but there's nothing wrong with that. And that really is the ultimate proof that soft skills, but also about things that you don't know something about, having fear is not helpful. So it rests on your back, Ryan, on yours, Ethan. When you detect that, then you have to, and it does, at least from one of the generations, it boils down to they resist the idea of simply being told what to do. They don't resist it if you also tell them why. Why am I telling you to do it that way? Well, I'll tell you why. It's not just because I'm telling you to do it, but that's, my generation would simply say, just do it. And then they walk away and they say to themselves, I have no clue what he just said to me. And that's been going on for generations, but it doesn't have to. Gentlemen, guess what? Your sentence is about to expire. I could talk to you, and I've touched on a bunch of different things. I could talk to both of you, each of you, for an unlimited amount of time, but our time is limited in the interest of your investment. It was an incredible conversation. And a byproduct is, Ethan, you and Ryan got to know each other a little bit better, no doubt, just based on the interplay. And I think even more of your company after having had the chance to have this hour-long conversation with you. As I invite other contractors in the future, it'll always be Barton Malow was the first one. Thank you so much for taking valuable time to spend with me. I appreciate it very much.
Well, Dennis, it was enjoyable, and Ethan as well was enjoyable. Good job. This was fun.
Good.
Yeah, Dennis, thanks, and Ryan, thank you for asking me to join you as well.
Gentlemen, take care.
All right. You too.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Doran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at DennisDuranSpeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Doran.